I never thought I'd end up in a situation like this. Handcuffed on my own ranch, of all places, with HOA Karen Vivian Wells screaming at me about vagrant camping laws. She didn't even know I was the sheriff. Picture this. I'm sitting there fishing at my family's lake. Cattle are lowing in the distance when suddenly flashlights blind me. My own deputy cuffs me, apologizing because Vivian, in her pristine white Lexus, had called me a vagrant, filming me with that smug smile she always had. You know, she taunted, rules apply to everyone. And all that rage started building up inside me. I'm Sheriff Rex Calloway, been doing this job for 8 years, and this was a whole new level of harassment. But guess what? Her harassment was about to become evidence in a federal fraud case. I was done being pushed around. Today, her perfect little HOA horror show was going to end. Now, let me take you back and show you how it all began. I inherited this 47-acre ranch from my grandfather, Bull Calloway, a man who could stare down a tornado and make it change direction. This land's been in my family since 1952. Back then, handshake deals meant something, and neighbors helped each other without asking, "What's in it for me?" The crown jewel of this place is a spring-fed lake, so clear you can count the pebbles 15 feet down. The smell of mesquite smoke from evening campfires mixed with that fresh, clean lake air. It was my therapy after a hard week of chasing meth labs and dealing with the worst people a sheriff can deal with. That lake? It was my reset button. I've been county sheriff for 8 years now. Domestic violence calls, meth labs, accident scenes that stick to your soul like tar. By Friday evening, I'm running on fumes and bad coffee, but the lake's always been my refuge. A quiet evening, pitching a tent, catching bass, listening to nothing but the sound of water lapping against the shore and cattle settling in for the night. Recent divorce? Didn't help. But we weren't falling apart in a dramatic way. Sarah and I just grew apart. We were like two trees planted too close together. She kept the house in town with its HOA rules and perfectly manicured lawn. I got to keep my sanctuary. Fair trade. Then came Hurricane Vivian. Vivian Thornberry Wells, 58 years old, a transplant from California. She rolled up in her pristine white Lexus 2 years ago and bought the biggest house in Meadowbrook Estates. This new development that sprouted up along my eastern property line like poison ivy. Within 6 months, she'd elbowed her way to being HOA president, promising to bring proper standards to the community. I've got no problem with people wanting a nice neighborhood, but this lady? She brought that militant California HOA mentality to rural Texas, where folks have been getting along just fine without someone measuring grass height with a ruler. The first time I met her, I was unloading fishing gear, and I heard the gravel crunching under expensive tires. Out steps Vivian, flanked by her 2 lackeys, Pudge Morrison, a retired insurance adjuster with dead eyes, and Delilah Crayons, a former city planning clerk who got fired for being too nitpicky, even for government work. "Sheriff Calloway," Vivian said in that sugary sweet voice that immediately made my teeth itch. "We need to talk about your recreational activities." She handed me a violation notice like she was serving a federal warrant. The charges: unsightly temporary structures and non-conforming recreational activities affecting community standards. A $500 fine with a 7-day deadline. I kept my voice calm, but you could feel the tension in the air. "Ma'am," I said, "this property predates your HOA by 40 years. I got the original surveys to prove it." Her smile didn't even falter. It was the kind of smile sharks give seals. "Paperwork can be complicated, Sheriff," she said. "Rules are rules. This isn't the Wild West anymore." Her sidekick, Delilah, stepped forward, holding that clipboard like it was a weapon. "Wouldn't want any complaints about law enforcement professionalism reaching the county commissioners," she said. "Clear as day. Either play ball or they take me down." I tipped my hat and said, "I'll look into it. Y'all have a blessed evening." Driving home, I thought about what fresh hell I got myself into. But my granddad didn't raise quitters. These ladies were about to learn what happens when you mess with the wrong Texan. Within a week, Vivian went full throttle. I came back from a 3-day camping trip to find my phone blowing up. The county planning office, environmental agency, and even the state water commission. Someone had filed complaints about potential water contamination and wildlife disruption on my property. Deputy Martinez pulled me aside at the courthouse, and I saw the surveillance photos. Vivian had been out there with a telephoto lens, documenting my property like she was preparing for a murder trial. But that wasn't the worst part. She'd hired a paralegal, joined Facebook groups about HOA legal victories, and started trashing me online. One post stopped me cold. Sometimes you have to make examples of people who think they're untouchable. Badges don't make you special. This sheriff is about to learn that lesson the hard way. She'd crossed the line. Time for my counterpunch. I spent the next day in the county archives, digging through dusty old boxes. Paper trails don't lie, and I knew where to look. What I found made me grin like a possum eating pimmons. The development she'd moved into, 3 houses, including hers, violated creek setback requirements by 15 to 20 feet. They were sitting in flood easement territory, illegal as a $3 bill. And guess what? They knew. Internal documents showed the developer had bribed a county planning clerk who got fired for corruption. My grandfather always said, "Let folks dig their own holes." So I decided to fight back, not as sheriff, but as a private citizen. No badge, no authority, just me, standing up to this California transplant with delusions of grandeur. The whole town got involved. Marlene's diner was buzzing with gossip. People picked sides. The newcomers backed Vivian, and the old-timers backed me. Gus from the hardware store even told me how she'd tried to cite him for parking his work truck in his own driveway. That's when I remembered something from Police Academy. Texas has strong adverse possession laws. You can't just form an HOA around existing property and claim authority over it. Original property rights trump new community agreements every time. And then Vivian, being Vivian, made the next move. She posted on Facebook again, "Does anyone know if camping counts as livestock?" Asking for a friend. I had to laugh. She was persistent, but not the brightest bulb in the box. But she wasn't backing down. She'd organized a surveillance operation with what she called a Property Standards Committee, basically her personal spy network. 5 residents had been assigned shifts to document my every move like I was running a criminal enterprise instead of fishing on my own land. Then my own department started getting calls, 23 reports in 8 days. Suspicious camping activity. Trespassing. Deputy Martinez didn't even know it was my land when he drove by for a patrol. The irony was so bitter, I could taste it. Vivian was building a paper trail, and I wasn't just sitting back and letting it happen. I ran her name through every database, and what popped up shocked me. 3 previous addresses, 3 separate HOA disputes. Same pattern every time. Move in, take control of the HOA board, harass neighbors, buy their properties cheap, then flip the houses for a huge profit. This wasn't about community standards. This was a real estate scam. I was about to expose it. So I gathered my team, Sarah, my old partner Deputy Martinez, Gus, and Marlene, and we got to work. The case was unfolding like a perfect storm. Sarah uncovered Vivian's ties to mortgage companies and real estate transactions across 3 states. Martinez collected digital evidence, documenting every violation. The community began speaking out. Elderly widows, young mechanics, Vietnam veterans, all sharing their stories of harassment. And then came the final twist. Vivian tried to escalate things by hiring a private security consultant, an ex-cop named Burke, who wasn't just here to intimidate me. He was here to intimidate everyone in the community. But Burke made the mistake of getting arrested for drunk driving, and he spilled everything to the feds. That was the final nail in Vivian's coffin. The whole scheme came crashing down. The truth came out, This wasn't just a fight about camping rights. It was about systematic fraud and abuse. The feds raided her, Burke turned state's evidence, and Vivian's empire fell apart. It was time for justice to be served, and it came down like a hammer. Now here I am, sitting by that same lake, watching the sun dip below the horizon, knowing that sometimes the best thing you can do is stand up and protect what's rightfully yours. Sometimes the fight chooses you, and sometimes standing your ground means protecting everyone else's ground too.